Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. Visible effect of lockdowns was clean air in cities as vehicles went off roads. The Himalayan range became visible from Punjab for the first time in 30 years. Satellite images showed the steep drop in nitrogen oxides from vehicular emissions in Delhi and Mumbai. As lockdowns ease and roads fill up again, we'll see pollution return. But the experience of breathing fresh air reinforces the case for switching to electric vehicles. The centre has an ongoing FAME2 scheme of subsidies and incentives, although stronger measures may be needed to meet the goal of electric vehicles comprising 30% of auto sales by 2030. The coronavirus crisis has hit the auto industry, and it's a wait to see when electric vehicles regain momentum. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the impact of electric vehicles on the auto industry. Joining me on the program today are Gaurav Gupta, Chief Commercial Officer, MG Motor India; AK Saxena, Senior Director, Electricity and Fuels Division, the Energy and Resources Institute, that is TERI; and Abhishek Saxena, Niti Aayog. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, AK Saxena, let me begin the program with you first. Let's try and analyze and understand the state of the electric vehicles sector in the country today.
Yeah, as of now, I think the government has taken a number of initiatives, and from time to time, government has refocused and reframed the initiatives in a manner so that it is meeting the requirement what is perceived at a given point of time, starting with the mission, the National Electricity Mobility Mission in 2020, which was initiated in 2013. And then government came with FAME 1 in April 2015. And thereafter, after a review of the FAME 1, I think government has come with FAME 2. But a number of initiatives have been taken by government on this side. Similarly, there have been the reductions in regard to the GST, etc., which have been announced. That is also another positive feature which can help to roll out and accelerate the adoption of the electric vehicles in the country. On the policy side also, EV policies has been made by a number of states, and the tariffs have also been announced by the number of state electricity regulatory commissions for the electric vehicle charging. So I think the map has been rolled out now. Now it has to be seen that how does the consumer and the industry take it so that it can get accelerated in the time to come. The FAME 2 has started just about a year ago or so. I think we have to see that how do we move forward and how does the acceleration take place.
Okay, I'll take the industry representative's point of view in just a bit. But before that, let me bring in Abhishek Saxena into the picture as well, since we're talking about some of the measures and policies that the government has incorporated over the years to try and deal with this particular issue. As far as the focus is concerned on electric vehicles, Abhishek, what is the key focus of the government and how do we take this momentum forward? Because now we have the lockdown, we've seen that the economy has taken a beating. And as a whole, if you look at electric vehicles, they're expensive as compared to their other counterparts. So what should we do?
Agreed. So Frank, thank you for having this very timely discussion on electric vehicles when we are trying to rebuild our economies, and everywhere around the world the focus has been on rebuilding sustainably and rebuilding through clean fuels, and we've seen the effects through reduced pollution, reduced greenhouse emission. In that aspect, I think in India electric vehicles play a huge role, as vehicular pollution pertain to nearly 1/3 of the total pollution in our cities, and 14 of our 20 cities are the most polluted ones in the world. So in that background, I think electric vehicles will play a huge role in promoting clean mobility solutions in our cities and in rural areas. In that, the focus of the government is very clear that we want to promote clean and shared mobility, and we want to focus extensively on public transport. So when I say clean and shared mobility, what I mean is we are looking extensively at promoting zero emission vehicles in buses, in three-wheelers, in two-wheelers, which form nearly around 80-85% of our vehicular mix. And if I look at how India actually moves, and if I see how the data from Census 2011, if I remove the non-motorized transport kind of vehicles, this constitutes nearly 90% of the vehicular travel that we have in India. And in Indian cities, a lot of people actually move by buses, move by three-wheelers, and a lot of people are actually now shifting to two-wheelers. So these are some of the segments that we are actually targeting. And if I look at FAME 2 also, nearly 80% of our demand incentives are focused on buses, three-wheelers, and two-wheelers. So these are the areas and the low-hanging fruits that we see in India. And we see a rapid electrification in these vehicle segments.
Okay, all right. Let me bring in Gaurav Gupta into the picture now. So Gaurav, as far as the industry is concerned, the industry was getting set to go really big as far as electric vehicles are concerned. Several measures were taken. But is that momentum now going to continue as the economy opens up?
I think Frank, both our panelists have said, I think the timing is just perfect. Largely because any kind of government actions also requires consumer adaptation and consumer choice as such, right? So the way we see this is that clean mobility is what we want on the top, but it has to have the three supporting pillars. One of the key pillar will be consumer is the health of the population, and we all understand that there is a new vigor when it comes to health and environment amongst all of us in India. I think that is probably one positive takeaway, if at all, from the entire COVID crisis. The second is the energy plan that the government has got, in terms of what is the energy basket, what kind of FAME 2, etc. implementation plans will be there. And then third is technology, right? When you put all these three things together, that drives the momentum of clean mobility. By itself, if you have a plan, it kind of hangs loose. So I think the way we all have said, and you talked about breathing clean air, we all understand it. In terms of affordability, yes, some more actions will be required to drive in the initial acquisition cost of electric vehicle. And I think generally more awareness has to still be crept in, so that people understand that, yes, we have to take that first step. Otherwise, it will always be a follower approach. That is a key factor. And I think, it has to go across various modes of transport. So yes, public transport, definitely, two-wheelers, and then moving on to passenger vehicles also. Like you talked about the percentage targets as such, yes, some of these have taken a bit of a backseat over the last 12 odd months because we do understand technologies will continue in parallel. It cannot replace completely for sure. But electric vehicles, clean energy vehicles are the way for the future. And I think that requires more focus in the times to come now. So we've got a good start because consumers, in fact, we've got many calls over the last 30, 60 days that because we had our electric vehicles selling only in 5 centers, NCR, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. And over the last 2 months, we've got calls from other state capital customers saying, can you also expand your sales to our locations? So that tells us that there is that interest and there is that responsibility factor increasing in people also, where they say, yes, we would like to be the first ones to do our bit for a cleaner environment. I think that needs to get more momentum, more promotion. And so discussions like this really become very, very helpful.
I guess you made a valid point there where, the onus has to be on every individual as well to try and create a cleaner environment and create a better atmosphere for everyone around. Taking the discussion forward now, AK Saxena, as far as, electric vehicles are concerned, what are some of the biggest challenges do you believe in the times to come?
I think the biggest challenge as of now is that the range anxiety which the consumer finds, number one. And associated with that is the availability of the public charging infrastructure, which is there in place. And thirdly, I think the time taken to charge the vehicle. These are the three important factors which come to the mind of a consumer when he starts thinking about the electric vehicles. When as a passenger you start from home or from whatever location you are in and you want to reach your destination, one has to be very sure that the battery has the capacity to make him travel to the required distance. And if at all there is any shortfall or the requirement of charging, then the adequate number of charging infrastructures are available on the way. And then the time taken for charging, which is extremely important because we have all seen the experience when the CNG was introduced in the country, the long queues which were there at the filling stations and the time taken for filling the gas was certainly a demotivating factor for the consumers to switch in from the IC engine-based vehicles to the CNG vehicles, CNG as a fuel. And I think these are the key challenges which the consumer finds in shifting to the e-vehicles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about challenges, Abhishek, how do we, overcome some of these challenges? What needs to be done in the immediate near future so that these challenges can be addressed?
Right. So I think Mr. Saxena has actually rightly pointed out the range anxiety, but I want to bring to the table a couple of points regarding this. See, Indian vehicular mix is very different from what you see in Europe or United States or other Western countries. You have around 80% sales, which is of two-wheelers. You have buses, you have autos and three-wheeler rickshaws, which you don't see in the other Western countries. Now, the charging infrastructure solutions for them would be very different from what you see in a passenger vehicle or cars. Uh, for example, that you have seen a lot of innovative solutions like battery swapping coming up. With these, you just plug and play the new battery. You have a downtime of somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes, and you get a new battery solution for that. So I think you have to understand that in India these solutions are actually coming up, and like you've seen a huge proliferation of electric rickshaws in India. You have more than 20 lakh electric rickshaws running on the road. And mostly all of them, I would say more than 85 to 90% of them are actually running on the battery swapping solution rather than the charging ones. And moreover, these two-wheelers, three-wheelers have a smaller battery. So there is a huge provision for them to be charged at home. So I'm not saying that we don't need public charging infrastructure. We actually need that because we need to instill confidence in our masses. We need to create awareness around them. But the need for them is not that great as we see in probably countries like US, Norway, London, UK, France, Germany, because the vehicular mix in India is different and you have different solutions that are actually coming up. Besides that, you see, so, as other panelists have rightly pointed out, there is a cost differential has that is there at present, and the cost differential is in the prices of upfront buying. So the point is, we as public policy think tank, Niti Aayog, and other ministries are actually striving to bring that price parity between electric vehicles and internal combustion engines at the upfront price level only. And mind you, at this point of time, it is very important to note that the operating cost of an electric vehicle is actually 1/5 to 1/10 the operating cost of an internal combustion engine. So the total cost of parity within a period of 3 to 4 years across all vehicle segments have actually been achieved. But through measures like FAME incentive or through measures like GST reduction, we've removed the permit requirements for commercial electric vehicles. We have brought down the registration fees to zero. We have asked states to reduce the road tax to zero, and other with non-fiscal incentives like green number plates and other measures. So we've taken a huge plethora of measures to bring down the price of it. Now I think the ball lies in the industry's court also, along with the government players, that they scale up the production and bring the production from other countries like China to India, and have a whole supply chain of electric vehicles in India to get to the mass production and get to that threshold where your electric vehicles are competitive not only in Indian markets but also for the export purposes.
Okay, let me take that point that you're making with Gaurav Gupta now. Gaurav, I think that's an interesting point that Abhishek has made about how the industry too needs to step up now and scale up as well and try and sort out this cost differential that he's talking about.
I think rightfully said. I'll give you a case in point. I'll give you a bit of the overall industry perspective. Probably I'll take a bit of a leap beyond passenger vehicle. That's where we are operating in. But just talk about that, and then I'll talk also about what should the industry be doing also to play its card to drive this entire vision forward. If you look at it, largely you have two-wheelers, commercial vehicle movement, and then you also have passenger vehicles. We talked about two-wheelers, which was pretty much evident in terms of battery swapping, etc. And many startups have come in this area. So actually, that can be a huge momentum as we go forward. In terms of commercial, especially public transport routes, they are pretty much fixed routes. You know that they'll go from point A to point B. What will be the travel duration? I think that transfer, as we're talking about, and we are seeing that is happening in many state transport corporations, that can accelerate, and people will start to see that also on the roads. Coming to passenger vehicles, I think this is where I will take a leap forward and say, I think the whole approach has to be of an ecosystem factor. You just cannot just launch an electric vehicle and say, hey, this is an electric vehicle. And that's what, at least when we at NG Motor, we were bringing in our ZS electric vehicle, we were bringing it to India. We actually assessed all these concerns because we said, if you are a customer today, Frank, if you were to buy an electric vehicle today, what would be in your mind? The first one is range anxiety. So many countries in the world earlier, in other countries, had given incentives to firstly just build an electric vehicle. Then over time, they said electric vehicle, you will get an incentive if the range is beyond 100 kilometers, 200, 300, 400, 500. So you start evolving technology. And today, frankly, in case in our point, our ZS EV, for example, with one charge, you can get 340 kilometers in one as the full range in just one full charge, which is quite substantial for any intercity movement or intracity movement for almost 3 to 5 days, literally. And even with the 340-kilometer range, even if you take 10% plus minus degradation, you are still pretty much good to travel. So that range anxiety takes care of it. Second is in terms of the now here is the ecosystem part, charging infrastructure and charging time. These are the two other concerns. So once you've got a car with good range, your next concern becomes, where will I charge my car? This is where our approach has been that as industry, you have to look at addressing it at the first stage. So most of the passenger cars, at least, ZS, we are giving a charging cable on board itself. So you charge it at home using any 15 ampere socket. And today, the government of Delhi, for example, has given very preferential tariffs to provide when you put an AC fast charger in customers' homes. That's their second step. Affordable rates at about 4.5 rupees a watt. So therefore, in case of ZS EV, which is the largest battery, 44.5 kilowatt, you're able to charge the car in less than 300 rupees all put together, and you get a range of 340. All put together, you are less than 1 rupee per kilometer. So it's very effective. The third part is that as a company, we tied up with some of the global players like Fortum, Delta, Exicom, and said we will put DC fast chargers in our dealerships. So you have mobility options because you can charge the car at home using the normal cable 15 ampere socket. We will install free of cost an AC fast charger in your house, which is again charging your car in 6 to 8 hours. That's like the way we charge our mobiles, literally, right? And it gives you a full range. And it will not be 6 hours every time because you have always some residual charge in your car always. Then third is you go to any dealership, quick, less than 50 minutes, full top up is available to you because that is DC fast charging. This is like, the way we would go to a petrol pump and fill up our diesel and gasoline in the car, right? Then the fourth, we are saying that in case you are traveling intercity across the highways also, along with wherever we have our own workshops, we're putting charging points there also. It gives you the confidence. So Delhi, Chandigarh, if you travel, you will have a charging point in Karnal, for example, or Panipat, right? And the fifth is that even within the city, a mobile van is available to charge your car. Why I'm explaining this is because consumers have to understand, and this is our job together as an entire ecosystem, that as more and more customers are going to have electric vehicles, the charging is at home. So you will need a mix of public and home chargers. But I'm also seeing now, and what the government is doing is on top of this charging system, right? That is in Hindi, I would say, Sone Pe Sohaga. So this is the 5-step charging process based on the ecosystem. Then you have the government plan also of 7,000 plus chargers, and all of them also have got the CCS to the fast DC charger as well. So this will only, the point is now to implement this charging infrastructure on the corridors that we have talked about, state highways, so that can get accelerated. That will be the best thing that consumers start to see the confidence. Already we are seeing some places like charge plazas, through the help of EESL as well. The last point I will talk about here is that eventually I'm also seeing a sign that you will have a solution of marketplace. So if I have a charger at home, I'm not using it, I'm going to office, my charger is available. Mr. Saxena's car is available. He wants to charge his car. On his app, he's going to see which all chargers are available. He'll go and charge his car. card. There's a credit card like these shared services like a market platform. You charge your car and you can pay up. So these solutions will come from startups. Eventually, in Delhi, for example, you have 400 petrol pumps. So imagine the pressure of these petrol pumps for filling up customers' cars. But then if you have more customers having charging points at home, plus flexibility of charging with their own AC fast charger, plus dealerships have chargers, government is putting DC fast chargers, you will have a large ecosystem of charging infrastructure. It's easy to say, but I think it's a journey and we have to start it. So our only approach is that use it as an ecosystem and then drive it forward.
Okay. I was just going to come to that, but you stole the words out of my mouth. You said, it's easy to say, but can we actually do it is another question altogether. And how we do it is also another big question going forward. All right. Talking about going forward, what's the best way forward? That's what I would like to get closing comments from all my guests on, starting first with you, Mr. A.K. Saxena.
I think we have to understand that this is a systemic change and it requires maybe a disruptive change in a number of links of the entire value chain. All the stakeholders have to prepare systematically for this change, and the scales leading to the reduction in upfront purchase cost, the availability of public charging infrastructure, as well as the residential charging infrastructure, and the suitable tariffs for the same, battery swapping. All these measures put together can accelerate the uptake of the electric vehicles in the country.
Okay. All right. Abhishek, as far as this whole issue of environment is concerned, I mean, do talk about the way forward as well, but I have a question too for you. Environment and ecosystem and everything that's spoken about electric vehicles and how it will be, a boost really as far as the entire environment and ecosystem is concerned. But then there are others who talk about how disposal of batteries can cause more harm and more damage, and there are those aspects that need to be addressed as well.
Right. Right. I'll just broaden your question. On the environmental aspects of EVs. So one of the concerns that you rightly mentioned is regarding the disposal of batteries. You'll have our projection says that you'll have somewhere around 1200 gigawatt hour of batteries that will be coming up by 2030. Now you need a safe and scientific disposal mechanism for that. And for that, we work with Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. We've brought the extended producer responsibility in battery disposal. We've asked the manufacturers to take back their batteries and dispose them scientifically. But Frank, I think we need to understand also a specific point here that the battery that we are talking about, which comes out of the electric vehicle, is not a waste product as such. It has a very precious amount of lithium and cobalt. And India, since it does not have the reserves of lithium and cobalt, urban mining, which is a concept that is coming up very heavily in India. So that can be used up and made a business model out of it. Now, how do we promote those business models where, we are asking industrial units to come up, where they take in the batteries, where they retrieve lithium and cobalt and give it back to the manufacturer so that they don't have to import them. I think that is the next crucial step that we have to come up, and we need to set up an ecosystem for the battery disposal also. Along with that, there are concerns about the total energy emissions of electric vehicles, and some say that it is equivalent to an IC engines at this point of time. Our Prime Minister has given a clarion call for 450 gigawatt of renewables in the grid. And as and when the grid improves, I think the energy efficiency of electric vehicles is going to increase considerably. And our estimates show that it will be anywhere between 70 to 80% more efficient than an IC within a decade. So these are some of the concerns that people have rightly raised, and these are some valid concerns that people across the world have regarding electric vehicles. Now, the way forward for electric vehicles and how do we rebuild sustainably? I think it is important that all stakeholders need to come together. They need to have a coherent approach in building this ecosystem forward. So when I say that all stakeholders, I mean the civil society organizations which need to create awareness. which need to gather momentum from people, because essentially it's a product when people will ask. It's a cyclical loop that when people will ask, the manufacturers or the units will come up and they'll start manufacturing in India. So an awareness at the customer end is needed. You need to have an industry coming up to the task of building manufacturing supply chain in India and not importing it from outside. You have a lot of resources. You have the backbone of automobile industry, which is the world's most competitive, I can say, in the world. So industry has to come forward. You need to have governments coming forward. So a lot of, especially in case of buses, state governments have a huge deficit of public transport system in their cities. So whenever they are trying to rebuild, I think it is important that they look for electric mobility solution. They look for innovative financing methods for that. And along with that, other institutions like financial bodies, NBFCs, banking institutions, these need to come up and provide adequate credit supply also for electric vehicle ecosystem.
Okay, all right. And Gaurav Gupta, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, so I think you really set the good platform. I will talk about just briefly about the battery of the electric vehicle. That is the most important part as we speak. And the technology in this area is also moving in a gradual form. So today, we've got some of the most advanced battery in India as of now. It's the nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries there. Now, like Mr. Saxena said, the second life of the battery is very useful. Because there's also a study by McKinsey which tells us that by the year 2030, almost 200 gigawatt hour can be used or can be consumed using the storage devices. So there are two key verticals for the battery: urban mining and second life. Second life can be for grid, can also be for mobile towers, and likewise. I'm happy to share, not talking about MG itself, but at least when we build the ecosystem, even though the battery second life comes after 7 to 8 years, and mind you, the battery still will have 70 to 80% of its charge life left. So if it's a 300 kilometer range battery or 340 kilometer range battery, after 7 years, it will still have 260 to 70 kilometers range available, right? So we have tied up with a company which is Umicore, which has the Europe's largest urban mining plant in Belgium, and understanding how the technology can be used within India for urban mining. Exicom is a great name that we have in India, which is using for storage services also. So this again goes into the fact that you have to think of the entire ecosystem when you bring in electric vehicle to the country. Second point, in terms of the way forward, here I would like to say that we have to look at in multiple ways. One is we are committed to make in India. Now, for electric vehicles, there are 3 or 4 areas we can look at. One is power electronics. I think that's an area that India really can help with the component suppliers and build the technology in India, capability in India. Second, when it comes to battery, battery has got various parts to it. It's the cell manufacturing, module, and the overall assembly of the battery. At least in MG, we are already working on bringing the battery assembly plant within India so that can serve the requirement as the first step. And then, of course, it will evolve based on the demand also. That again supports the readiness part. The third is in terms of the government policies, I would say. We still have got some inconsistencies across various states. Some steps have been taken, but in some states, we still do not have, 0% registration charges, for example. Bordering states are not having the same parity as well. In some states, you have green number plates. In some, you don't have green number plates. So this kind of situation of inconsistency remains. It will be great if that can be, streamlined. The other part is also in terms of the overall energy drive plan. If we are looking at to say electric vehicle is the way to go, we want to look at the electric batteries as the way to go forward. Just the way we import oil, we have a basket of countries where we import oil from. Similarly, in electric vehicles, if we can have that clarity and that direction from the government, and here this will be our energy basket going forward for electric vehicles, that'll be very helpful. And I think once we get into all this together, one key factor is that I think we have to come together to work, industry, OEMs, and all the other stakeholders which come into picture and put a platform and say, let's us have renewed energy for electric vehicles. Because frankly, there is no debate anymore that there can be any other future for mobility. It has to be electric. So if we can combine the resources together, it'll be a great way to take the entire direction forward.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that we need a change in mindset and a change in ecosystem. There is no debate really as far as what the future of mobility is. It's going to be EVs, is what the panelists are suggesting. We just need to create more awareness. We need better infrastructure and technology in place, and we are all set to go. We need to carry the momentum forward. That's it from me. See you again next time.